My name is Violet, and I am 32 years old. I'm standing in my kitchen right now, looking around at a space that finally feels like mine. I used to believe that cooking for someone was the purest way to show love. I poured my heart into every meal, every carefully chopped vegetable, every perfectly timed dish. But my husband turned every dinner into a courtroom, and I was always the defendant. It took me a year to realize the problem was never the food, it was respect, or rather, the complete absence of it. Before I share my story, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if stories about finding your strength resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, to the first meal I cooked as a newlywed wife. I grew up in a modest house in Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where the neighbors knew your name and the mailman waved every morning. My parents divorced when I was 14, and that single event shaped everything about who I would become. My mother, Susan, worked two jobs to keep food on the table for me and my younger brother, Jake. She left before sunrise and came home after dark, exhausted but never complaining. Because of her schedule, I learned to cook out of necessity. I would come home from school, pull out whatever ingredients we had, and figure out how to turn them into something edible. At first, my attempts were disasters. I burned rice, oversalted soup, and once created a casserole so bad that even our dog refused to eat it. But I kept trying. I checked out cookbooks from the library, watched cooking shows on our tiny television, and slowly, meal by meal, I improved. By the time I graduated high school, I could make a full Thanksgiving dinner by myself. Cooking became more than survival for me. It became my creative outlet, my way of showing love when words felt inadequate. I met Nathan at a mutual friend's birthday party 4 years ago. He was 30 at the time, tall with broad shoulders and a smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. He worked as a civil engineer, designing bridges and highways, and he talked about his job with such passion that I found myself genuinely interested in concrete load calculations. On our first date, he took me to a small Italian restaurant and spent half the evening asking me questions about myself. He seemed genuinely curious about my thoughts, my dreams, my favorite books. When I mentioned that I loved to cook, his eyes lit up. He told me about his mother, Linda, with such admiration in his voice. She was the best cook he had ever known, he said. She made everything from scratch, grew her own herbs, and had been perfecting her recipes for 40 years. He described Sunday dinners at her house like they were sacred rituals. At the time, I found it endearing. A man who loved and respected his mother, I thought, would surely know how to love and respect his wife. After 2 years of dating, Nathan proposed on a quiet beach during a weekend getaway. I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close family and a few friends in a garden ceremony. My mother cried happy tears, and Nathan's mother, Linda, sat in the front row wearing a cream-colored dress that I noticed was almost white. I brushed it off as coincidence. We bought a little house in the suburbs, nothing fancy but ours. It had a backyard big enough for a garden and a kitchen with plenty of counter space. I spent weeks before we moved in picking out pots and pans, organizing spice racks, and imagining all the wonderful meals I would create for my new husband. I could not wait to build a home filled with warmth and delicious food. The night after we returned from our honeymoon, I planned a special dinner. I made roasted chicken with herbs, creamy mashed potatoes, and roasted vegetables with a balsamic glaze. I set the table with candles and our new dishes, wanting everything to be perfect for our first meal as a married couple in our new home. Nathan came home from work, kissed my cheek, and sat down at the table. I watched nervously as he cut into the chicken and took his first bite. He chewed slowly, his expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he swallowed and said, "It is good, but my mom makes her chicken differently. Her seasoning is more balanced." I felt a small prick of disappointment, but pushed it aside. Of course, his mother's cooking would be different. She had been doing it for decades. I smiled and asked if he could share her recipe sometime so I could try it her way. He said he would ask her, then continued eating in silence. I told myself it was fine. This was just the first meal. I had plenty of time to learn what he liked. I did not know then that those words were just the first drops in what would become a relentless flood. The comparison started small, so small that I almost did not notice them at first. A few days after the chicken dinner, I made spaghetti with homemade marinara sauce. I had simmered the tomatoes for hours, added fresh basil and garlic, and tasted it multiple times to make sure the seasoning was right. Nathan twirled the pasta on his fork, took a bite, and said, "Namer never uses store-bought tomatoes. She grows her own in the backyard." I explained that we lived in a house without an established garden, and that the tomatoes I used were from the farmer's market, not a can. He shrugged and replied, "I am just saying, fresh tomatoes make a difference." 2 weeks after the wedding, Linda came to visit for the first time. She was 62 years old with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore a floral apron over her clothes as if she might need to start cooking at any moment. She walked into our home carrying a large pot. "I made chicken soup for Nathan," she announced, setting it on the counter. "I know how much he loves it, and I thought you might want to learn a few things, dear." I thanked her and tried not to feel offended. She was just being helpful, I told myself. We sat down for lunch, and I served the soup alongside some crusty bread I had picked up from the bakery. Nathan took one spoonful of his mother's soup and practically moaned with pleasure. "Mom, this is incredible, as always. Nobody makes soup like you." Linda smiled demurely and turned to me. "Cooking for a man is an art, Violet. Nathan has very specific tastes. He was raised on good homemade food." I nodded politely, feeling like I was being graded on an exam I did not know I was taking. After Linda left, I asked Nathan for his mother's soup recipe. He texted her, and she sent back a list of ingredients and vague instructions. When I attempted to recreate it the following week, something was off. The broth did not have the same depth. The vegetables were not as tender. Nathan tasted it and immediately said, "It's close, but something is missing. Mom has a secret ingredient." I called Linda the next day and asked about this mysterious secret ingredient. She laughed softly and said, "Some things cannot be taught, dear. It comes from years of loving my family." That response bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Over the next few months, a pattern emerged that I could not ignore. Every single meal I prepared came with commentary. When I made toast in the morning, Nathan would say, "Mom toasts it just a little bit longer. It gets crispier that way." When I scrambled eggs, he mentioned that his mother added a splash of milk to make them fluffier. When I brewed coffee, he told me Linda used a French press instead of our drip machine. I started keeping a mental list of all his preferences, all the ways his mother did things differently. I adjusted my toast timing, bought a French press, and added milk to my eggs. But it did not matter. There was always something else, some other way I fell short. One Saturday, I met my best friend Emma for coffee at our favorite cafe downtown. Emma and I had been close since our freshman year of college. She was 31, single by choice, and had no filter when it came to telling me the truth. I found myself venting about Nathan's constant comparisons, framing it as a minor annoyance. Emma set down her latte and looked at me seriously. "That sounds exhausting, Vi. Does he ever just say thank you?" I thought about it. When was the last time Nathan had simply appreciated a meal without qualifying it with a comparison? I could not remember. "He does not mean it badly," I said, hearing the defensiveness in my own voice. "He just grew up with amazing home cooking. His mom really is a great cook." Emma leaned forward. "There is a difference between appreciation and comparison. One builds you up, the other tears you down. Which one is Nathan doing?" I did not have an answer. That night, I lay in bed while Nathan slept beside me. I decided that I would cook a meal so perfect, so delicious, that he would have nothing to compare. I would prove to myself and to him that I was a good cook. I fell asleep planning the menu, not realizing that I was trying to win a game that was designed for me to lose. 6 months into our marriage, Nathan's 34th birthday arrived. I planned for weeks, determined to make the day special. I decided to bake a chocolate cake from scratch, using a recipe I had perfected over years of practice. It was the same cake I had made for my mother's 50th birthday, the one that made my brother Jake go back for 3 slices. I took the day off work and spent hours in the kitchen. I melted premium chocolate, whipped butter until it was fluffy, and carefully measured each ingredient. The layers came out of the oven perfectly domed. I made a rich chocolate ganache for the frosting and decorated the top with chocolate shavings. When I stepped back to admire my work, I felt genuinely proud. We had a small gathering that evening. Linda came, of course, along with a few of Nathan's friends and their partners. I set the cake in the center of the dining table, candles glowing. Everyone sang happy birthday, and Nathan made a wish before blowing out the flames. As I began cutting slices, Linda spoke up. "Oh, Nathan just loves my red velvet cake. Maybe next year, Violet, you can try that recipe. It is his absolute favorite." Nathan nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, Mom's red velvet is legendary. You should definitely learn to make it, Violet." I stood there holding the cake knife, feeling as though the wind had been knocked out of me. The cake I had spent all day making, the one I was so proud of, suddenly felt worthless. I smiled because there were guests watching, but inside, something cracked. After the party, after everyone had left and Nathan had gone to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen staring at the half-eaten chocolate cake. I picked up a fork and took a bite. It was delicious, rich, moist, perfectly balanced. There was nothing wrong with it, but somehow I still felt like I had failed. The following months brought more of the same, but worse. What had started as occasional comments became a nightly ritual of criticism. Nathan would come home, sit down to dinner, and find something wrong with whatever I had made. When I cooked steak, he said it was a little overcooked and that his mother always got the perfect medium rare. When I made salad, he complained that I used bottled dressing instead of making my own like Linda did. When I prepared soup, he said it needed more salt because his mother always seasoned perfectly. I tried harder. I watched cooking videos until 2 in the morning. I bought expensive ingredients. I practiced techniques over and over. Nothing changed. Every meal came with a side of criticism. Then came the night that something shifted. I had made pan-seared salmon with roasted asparagus and quinoa. It was a recipe I had made dozens of times, one that always turned out well. Nathan took a single bite of the fish, frowned, and pushed his plate away. "I cannot eat this," he said, reaching for his phone. "It is too dry. I will just order pizza." I stared at the plate, at the salmon I had carefully seasoned and cooked to what I thought was the right temperature. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Nathan was already scrolling through his phone, placing the order. He did not notice my reaction. Or maybe he did and just did not care. Around this time, Linda started sending weekly care packages. Every Sunday, Nathan would come home with a cooler full of frozen containers from his mother. Pot roast, lasagna, meatloaf, soup, all labeled with reheating instructions. "Just in case Violet is too busy or tired to cook properly," Linda told him. Nathan thought it was wonderful. He would heat up his mother's food for dinner while I sat across from him eating whatever I had made for myself. The message was clear. My cooking was not good enough to feed her son. The stress started affecting everything. I could not sleep at night, lying awake planning meals and anticipating criticisms. I lost weight because my appetite disappeared under the constant anxiety. My colleagues at work noticed that I seemed tired and distracted, but I brushed off their concerns with excuses about being busy. One evening, after Nathan criticized my lasagna for having too much cheese compared to his version, I finally broke. "I try so hard every single day," I said, tears streaming down my face. "Nothing I do is ever good enough for you." Nathan looked at me with genuine confusion. "I am just giving you feedback. You should want to improve." "Improve to what?" I demanded. "To become your mother?" He paused, and for a moment I thought he might actually hear me. Then he said, "Would that be so bad? She is an amazing woman." I walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the edge of the bed and cried until I had nothing left. That night, lying alone in the dark while Nathan watched television in the living room, I wondered if there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Maybe I really was a terrible cook. Maybe I really was not good enough. I did not recognize it then, but looking back, I know exactly what was happening. I was being systematically broken down, one comparison at a time. Our one-year wedding anniversary fell on a Saturday in late June. Despite everything that had happened over the previous months, some hopeful part of me thought that maybe this could be a turning point. Maybe if I did something really special, Nathan would finally see my effort and appreciate it. I requested a day off from work, something I rarely did. I planned a 5-course dinner with appetizers, soup, salad, a main course, and dessert. I found recipes from a culinary magazine, the kind of elevated home cooking that would be served at an upscale restaurant. I made a shopping list that included ingredients I had never worked with before, things like truffle oil and saffron. I woke up early and went to 3 different stores to find everything I needed. I spent the entire day in the kitchen, following recipes meticulously, tasting and adjusting, timing everything so all the courses would be ready in sequence. I set our dining table with the good china we had received as wedding gifts. I folded cloth napkins into elegant shapes. I even wrote Nathan a letter by hand, expressing my love and my commitment to our marriage. By the time 6 o'clock arrived, everything was ready. The house smelled incredible. Candles were lit, soft music played from our speaker. I had changed into a nice dress and touched up my makeup. When I heard Nathan's car pull into the driveway, my heart pounded with nervous anticipation. He walked in, kissed my cheek absently, and glanced at the table. "You went all out," he said, though his tone was more surprised than pleased. I smiled. "It is our anniversary. I wanted to make it special." We sat down and I brought out the first course, bruschetta with fresh tomatoes, basil, and a balsamic reduction drizzled on top. I had made the bread from scratch, toasting it to the perfect crispness. Nathan took a bite. He chewed thoughtfully, then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "Hold on," he said, already dialing. "Hey, Mom. Yeah, Violet made bruschetta. Do you have that recipe you use? I think she could use some tips." I stood frozen, holding the plate of appetizers I had spent 2 hours preparing. Nathan put the phone on speaker and set it on the table. His mother's voice filled the room. "Oh, bruschetta! Yes, I have a wonderful recipe. Now, Violet, the key is to let the tomatoes marinate for at least 2 hours before serving. Did you do that?" Nathan looked at me expectantly. I had marinated them for 90 minutes. I shook my head slightly. Linda continued, "And you need to use really good quality olive oil, not the cheap stuff from the regular grocery store. And the bread should be rubbed with fresh garlic before toasting." Nathan was nodding along, actually taking notes on his phone. I set down the plate and took my seat, watching this surreal scene unfold. "It is our anniversary, Nathan," I said quietly. He held up a finger, signaling me to wait, and kept talking to his mother. They spoke for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of Linda providing instructions on the correct way to make bruschetta while our anniversary dinner grew cold. When they finally hung up, Nathan looked pleased. "Mom will send you the proper recipe tomorrow," he said, as if he had done me a tremendous favor. Something inside me snapped. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, more like a thread that had been stretched too thin, finally giving out. "Do you even see me?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "Do you see how hard I try?" Nathan sighed like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You are being dramatic. I am trying to help you become a better cook." "I do not want to be a better cook," I said. "I want to be your wife, not a contestant on some cooking competition being judged by your mother." He shook his head. "You are overreacting. This is exactly why I cannot give you feedback without you getting upset." I looked at him then, really looked at him, and I asked a question that had been forming in my mind for months. "Tell me one meal I have cooked in the past year that you actually enjoyed. One meal where you did not compare it to your mother." Nathan opened his mouth to respond, then he closed it. He sat there thinking, scrolling through his memory, and came up empty. "That is what I thought," I said. That night, while Nathan watched a movie in the living room as if nothing had happened, I went into our bedroom and called my mother. I told her everything, all of it, from the first comparison to the bruschetta disaster. I had not realized how much I had been holding in until it all came pouring out. My mother listened without interrupting. When she finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Violet, I worked 2 jobs while you were growing up. And even then, your father told me I never did enough. Nothing I did was ever right. I divorced him because I finally realized I deserved better." She paused and I heard her take a breath. "So do you," she said. "You deserve better than this." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I thought about my mother, working herself to exhaustion, while my father criticized her for not keeping the house clean enough. I remembered the relief on her face after the divorce, the way she had slowly started smiling again. I had promised myself I would never end up in a marriage like that. And yet, here I was. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, looking around at the home I had tried so hard to fill with love and warmth. I thought about every meal I had cooked, every criticism I had absorbed, every time I had told myself to try harder. Sometime around 3 in the morning, I opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed "Divorce Lawyer, Columbus, Ohio," and pressed search. The screen filled with results. I clicked on the first one and started reading. My hands were shaking, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but I also knew I could not keep living like this. I was 32 years old, and I deserved to feel like I was enough. The lawyer's office was in a professional building downtown, the kind of place with neutral carpet and generic artwork on the walls. I sat in the waiting room, fidgeting with the strap of my purse and wondering if I was making a terrible mistake. The receptionist called my name and I walked into the office of Patricia Coleman. Patricia was 48, with sharp eyes behind elegant glasses and the kind of calm confidence that comes from years of experience. She shook my hand firmly and gestured for me to sit. "Tell me what is going on," she said. So I did. I told her about Nathan's constant comparisons, about feeling like a failure in my own kitchen, about the way his mother inserted herself into every aspect of our home life. As I spoke, I heard how it sounded out loud, and part of me worried she would think I was being dramatic. But Patricia just nodded and took notes. When I finished, she looked up at me. "This is more common than you might think," she said. "What you are describing is emotional abuse. Constant criticism designed to undermine your confidence and keep you trying to meet impossible standards." Hearing someone name it made something click into place. I was not crazy. I was not being too sensitive. What was happening to me had a name. Patricia explained my legal situation. The house had been purchased after our marriage, with both our names on the deed. However, I had provided 70% of the down payment from my personal savings, money I had accumulated before we got married. That gave me a strong argument for keeping the home. Ohio was an equitable distribution state, meaning assets would be divided fairly, though not necessarily equally. She advised me to start documenting everything, keep a record of every criticism, every incident that made me feel diminished, save any text messages or emails that supported my account of the marriage. I left her office with a folder full of information and a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in a year, I felt like I was doing something rather than just enduring something. Over the following weeks, I became a quiet detective in my own marriage. I started a journal, writing down every negative comment Nathan made. I screenshotted text messages where he sent me my mother's recipes with notes like, "Mom says you should try this since yours was not quite right." I saved emails where Linda offered unsolicited advice on everything from cleaning products to the correct way to fold laundry. I did not let Nathan know anything had changed. I cooked dinners, accepted his criticisms with a nod, and retired to our bedroom to add another entry to my growing documentation. It felt strange to be gathering evidence against my own husband, but also necessary. I started confiding in people I trusted. Emma was my first call. When I told her I was considering divorce, she exhaled with relief. "I have been waiting for you to see what was happening," she said. "I was so worried about you. Whatever you need, I am here." My brother Jake drove up from Cincinnati to have lunch with me. He was 28, protective in the way younger siblings sometimes are, and furious when I told him what had been going on. "I will help you move his stuff out myself," he said, only half joking. My mother offered her spare bedroom if I needed a place to stay, but I told her I was hoping to keep the house. It was my home. I had put more money into it. I was not going to let Nathan and his mother push me out. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank, one where Nathan would not see the statements. I started directing a portion of each paycheck there, building a financial cushion for whatever came next. I gathered all our important documents, the deed to the house, our car titles, our marriage certificate, and made copies that I stored at Emma's apartment. Through all of this, I maintained the appearance of normalcy. I did not want Nathan to suspect anything until I was ready. One evening, about a month into my preparation, Nathan surprised me. He came home from work with groceries and announced that he was going to make dinner. I sat at the kitchen counter, watching in stunned silence as he pulled out ingredients and started cooking. He made pasta with a meat sauce, nothing elaborate, but more effort than he had put into cooking our entire marriage. "I know I have been hard on you," he said as he stirred the sauce. "Let us start fresh, okay?" For a brief moment, I felt my resolve waver. Maybe he could change. Maybe this could work. Then he added, "Mom gave me this recipe. I thought I could show you how it is done." And there it was. Even when he was trying to make a gesture, his mother was at the center of it. Even when he was cooking for me, it was really about demonstrating his mother's superiority. The pasta was fine. I ate it and thanked him. But that night, lying in bed while he snored beside me, I knew with certainty that nothing was going to change. A few days later, I tracked down Megan, Nathan's sister-in-law from his older sister's marriage. They had divorced 5 years ago after 12 years together. I found her on social media and sent a carefully worded message asking if we could talk. We met for coffee at a quiet cafe outside of town where no one would recognize us. Megan was in her mid-40s, with tired eyes that brightened when she saw me. "I wondered when you would reach out," she said as we settled into a corner booth. I asked her what had gone wrong in her marriage. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Linda happened," she said. "She compared my husband to Nathan constantly. Nathan is so successful. Nathan takes such good care of his mother. Why cannot you be more like Nathan?" It never stopped. I felt a chill run down my spine, the same pattern, just in reverse. "That family has a disease," Megan continued. "Linda needs to be the center of everyone's world. She raised her children to believe she was perfect, and God help anyone who threatens that illusion." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Get out while you can, Violet. They will never change. I wasted 12 years learning that lesson." I drove home that night feeling both validated and terrified. I was not imagining things. This was real, and it was bigger than I had understood. The following weekend, I sat down with a calendar and chose a date. Sunday, 2 weeks away. That was when I would confront Nathan and tell him I wanted a divorce. I was not running away in the night. I was not leaving quietly. I was going to stand in my kitchen, in my home, and tell him the truth. I just had to be ready. The Sunday I had chosen arrived with deceptively pleasant weather. Sunshine streamed through our windows, birds sang in the backyard. It felt wrong for such a consequential day to look so ordinary. I invited Linda to lunch. I told Nathan it was a gesture of goodwill, an attempt to build a better relationship with his mother. He was thrilled. He practically hummed with happiness as he showered and dressed. Linda arrived precisely at noon, as punctual as always. She walked through our front door carrying a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. "I brought it back up," she said, setting it on the counter, "just in case the meal does not turn out well." I smiled sweetly and thanked her. If she noticed anything different about my demeanor, she did not show it. I had prepared a simple lunch: grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, and a green salad. Nothing fancy, nothing that required elaborate preparation. The food was not the point. We sat down at the dining room table. Nathan helped himself to large portions, chattering happily about a project at work. Linda took delicate bites and examined each one like a health inspector searching for violations. Halfway through the meal, she started. "The chicken is a bit bland, dear," she said, reaching for the salt. "Nathan, do you remember how I make my lemon herb chicken, the one with the sauce?" Nathan nodded eagerly. "Oh yeah, that sauce is incredible. You should definitely get that recipe, Violet." I sent down my fork. "Linda, I need to say something, and I need both of you to listen." They looked at me with surprise. Nathan's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Linda raised an eyebrow. I reached into my bag and pulled out a black notebook. "Over the past year," I said, "I have documented every single criticism, every comparison, every time I was made to feel like I was not good enough in my own home." I opened the notebook to a page I had marked. "Nathan, in the 12 months we have been married, you have compared me to your mother exactly 237 times. That averages out to almost once a day." Nathan's face shifted from confusion to defensiveness. "I was just trying to help you become a better—" "No, you were not trying to help me. You were trying to control me. You were trying to mold me into someone I could never be, and you used your mother as the impossible standard I was always failing to meet." I turned to Linda. "And you enabled this. You have made me feel unwelcome in my own home since the day I married your son. You send food every week because you do not trust me to feed him. You give me incomplete recipes designed to make me fail. You criticize everything I do." Linda's face flushed red. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she said, her voice rising. "I have only ever tried to help you. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" I repeated. "For being made to feel like a failure? For having my husband call you during our anniversary dinner to ask for cooking tips? For a year of being told that nothing I do will ever be as good as you?" Linda turned to Nathan with an expression of wounded outrage. "Are you going to let her talk to me like this?" Nathan sat frozen, caught between us. His eyes darted back and forth. I could see the conflict in his face. Years of conditioning warring against whatever part of him knew I was right. "Nathan," I said, and my voice was steady now, "for once in your life, you need to choose your marriage or your mother's approval. You cannot have both anymore." He was silent for a long moment. I watched him struggle. I watched him look at his mother's indignant face. I watched him make his choice. "Violet," he said slowly, "you are being unreasonable. Mom has always been there for me. She only wants what is best." I felt something settle in my chest. It was not sadness exactly, more like the last piece of a puzzle clicking into place. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for making this easy." I reached into my bag again and pulled out a manila envelope. I slid it across the table toward Nathan. "These are divorce papers. I have already consulted with a lawyer." Nathan's face went pale. "You cannot be serious," he said. "Over some cooking comments?" I shook my head. "It was never about the cooking. It was about respect, something you have never given me." Linda stood up, nearly knocking over her chair. "Good riddance," she spat. "Nathan deserves someone who actually appreciates him, someone who knows how to take care of a man properly." I looked at her calmly. "He deserves someone who he can appreciate, but he is too busy worshiping you to see anyone else clearly. You made sure of that." Nathan found his voice. "Fine," he said, and I heard anger creeping in now. "Fine, you want a divorce, you can have one, but I am keeping this house." I smiled. I had been waiting for this. "Actually, no," I said. "I paid 70% of the down payment from my savings. I have all the documentation. My lawyer has advised me that I have a very strong case for keeping the house." Nathan's mouth opened and closed. "That is not fair," he managed. I stood up from the table. "What is not fair," I said, "is spending a year being told I was never good enough. What is not fair is having my husband call his mother for cooking advice on our anniversary. What is not fair is being compared to another woman every single day of my marriage." I looked at both of them, mother and son, two people who had spent a year making me feel small. "You can move back in with your mother, Nathan. I'm sure she will be delighted to cook for you every day. You can finally have exactly what you want." Linda grabbed her purse and took Nathan's arm. "We do not have to listen to this. Come on, Nathan, we're leaving." Nathan stood slowly. He looked at me one last time, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret? Understanding? I would never know. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. They walked out the front door together. I watched through the window as they got into Linda's car and drove away. I stood alone in my kitchen. My kitchen. I looked at the table with its half-eaten lunch. I looked at the casserole dish Linda had brought, still sitting untouched on the counter. I picked up the casserole and dropped it in the trash. Then I sat down on the couch, and for the first time in a year, I took a full, deep breath. I did not cry. I did not second-guess myself. I just felt free. The divorce took 4 months to finalize. 4 months of paperwork, negotiations, and lawyers going back and forth. Nathan tried to fight for the house at first, but the documentation was clear. I had paid the bulk of the down payment. I had been making the majority of the mortgage payments. The house was mine. In the end, we split most other assets down the middle. He kept his car, I kept mine. We divided the furniture. He took the fancy espresso machine his mother had given us. I kept the simple drip coffee maker that apparently made inferior coffee. The day Nathan moved out, I watched from the window as he loaded boxes into a moving truck. His mother was there, directing traffic, telling him where to put things. When the last box was loaded, he looked back at our house. At me, standing in the window, he raised his hand in a small wave. I nodded once in acknowledgement. Then he got in his car and drove away. That night, I sat alone in my empty feeling house and cried. Not because I missed Nathan. I did not really. I cried for the year I had lost. I cried for the woman I used to be, the one who believed that love meant constantly striving to be good enough. I cried because even though I had won, I still felt like I had lost something. The first few weeks were the hardest. The house was so quiet. I was so used to bracing myself for criticism that the silence felt strange, almost uncomfortable. I would catch myself seasoning a dish and then stopping, waiting for someone to tell me I was doing it wrong, but no one did. My mother came to stay with me for a month. She helped me rearrange the furniture, getting rid of the layout Nathan had insisted on and creating something that felt more like me. We painted the kitchen together, covering the stark white walls with a warm butter yellow color that made me smile every time I walked in. We cooked together too, the way we used to when I was a teenager, learning my way around a kitchen. She did not criticize. She did not compare. She just tasted whatever I made and said, "This is delicious, honey," or "Maybe a little more salt?" And when I adjusted the seasoning, she did not treat it like a character flaw. Emma became my regular weekend companion. We started taking short road trips, visiting small towns neither of us had ever been to, eating at local diners, and staying in quirky bed and breakfasts. On one of those trips, sitting by a lake at sunset, she told me she was proud of me. "You got yourself out," she said. "A lot of people never do." I enrolled in therapy, something I probably should have done much sooner. My therapist helped me understand what had happened in my marriage. She explained the patterns of emotional abuse, the way constant criticism erodes your sense of self, the way abusers often use impossibly high standards to keep their victims perpetually striving and perpetually failing. She also helped me understand that none of it was my fault. I was not a bad cook. I was not a bad wife. I had simply married someone who needed me to feel inadequate so he could feel powerful. 6 months after the divorce was final, Nathan called me. It was late evening, and I was reading on the couch, a glass of wine on the table beside me. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Violet," he said, and his voice was different, quieter. "I have been thinking a lot. About us, about how I treated you. I was wrong." I waited, not saying anything. "I did not realize what I was doing," he continued. "The constant comparisons, making you feel like nothing you did was good enough. I see it now. I am in therapy, working on it. I am so sorry." I let his words hang in the air. Part of me, a small part, felt vindicated. He was finally admitting it. "I am glad you are getting help, Nathan," I said eventually. "I mean that." "Do you think," he started, then paused. "Do you think we could try again? I could be different. I know I could." I thought about it. I really did. I thought about the man I had fallen in love with, the one who had seemed so kind and attentive before we got married. I thought about whether people could really change. "I forgive you, Nathan," I said finally. "I really do. But I am never going back to being that person, the one who felt like she was never enough. I cannot risk becoming her again." He was quiet for a moment. "What if I could prove to you that I have changed?" "Then prove it to yourself," I said. "Not for me, for you, and for whoever comes next. But that person will not be me." After we hung up, I sat for a long time in the quiet of my house. I did not feel sad. I did not feel angry. I just felt certain. 1 year after the divorce, I stood in my kitchen on a Sunday morning. Sunlight poured through the yellow walls I had painted with my mother. I was making pancakes, the fluffy buttermilk kind with real maple syrup. There was no recipe. I was just cooking the way I felt like cooking, adding a little extra vanilla because I like it that way. The pancakes were perfect, golden brown, soft in the middle, just the right amount of sweetness. I ate them at my kitchen table, alone but not lonely, and I savored every bite. I had learned so much in the 2 years since my marriage began and ended. I learned that love should not feel like a test you are always failing. I learned that someone who truly cares about you sees your effort, not just your shortcomings. I learned that constant comparison is not feedback. It's control wearing a helpful disguise. Most importantly, I learned that I do not need to become anyone else to deserve love. I was always enough. I just needed to find the person who could see that. And eventually, I realized that person was me. If you are watching this and you are in a relationship where nothing you do seems good enough, I want you to know something. The problem is not you. It never was. You deserve someone who appreciates your efforts, who sees your love in the things you do, who makes you feel valued exactly as you are. As for me, I finally found that person. She was there all along, waiting for me to see her. And for the record, my pancakes are absolutely delicious. No comparison needed. I would love to hear from you now. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you could never measure up? How did you find your way out? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss more stories about finding strength in difficult times. Thank you for watching and for being a part of this community. I hope you carry with you the knowledge that you are enough, exactly as you are. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.
Looking back, I realized the secret ingredient my mother-in-law talked about wasn't love, it was control. In any relationship, there is a thin line between honoring tradition and being suffocated by it. If you are constantly auditioning for a role in your own life, or if your partner uses their past to diminish your present, that isn't family values, it's a red flag. The hardest part wasn't leaving that kitchen, it was unlearning the lie that I had to earn respect through perfection. To anyone watching who feels like a defendant at their own dinner table, you are not a recipe to be tweaked. You are a partner to be celebrated. Don't spend years trying to win a game that was rigged for you to lose. Protect your peace, set your boundaries, and remember, you deserve a seat at a table where you are finally enough.